Your Highness, Your Excellencies, Professor Mohammed Yunus, alumni from VA Harvard and other business schools, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the 4th edition of Crossroads. A lot has happened in last year, as we know. Since the last Crossroads event, oil prices have gone down by 30%. 1 million young people have come on the market, job market, just in the GCC. And 30 million people have come to the job market in the Middle East and the subcontinent.
Today is about stories. The wonderful story of Mohammed Yunus going out there and saving millions of lives. Stories about Dubai as a nation and how it transformed. Stories about people who came with $7 in their pocket and now are worth $7 billion. Stories about in 20 years you make a massive organization and build infrastructure and so on. All of these people are telling their story today. This crossroads between East and West, North and South, the trade flow between China and Africa, between West and East. China has always been the magnet that attracts you.
This area has been a crossroad for 5,000 years. It's been 5,000 years of excitement with ups and downs, uninterrupted, and you can go as far as you want in history. And the area has created some of the most creative, intelligent, resilient people.
Or this region, for centuries, the success was when we had openness. When you have openness and tolerance, and if we did just one thing, female empowerment.
We all grow up in an environment that has man-made challenges placed upon us, things that we can't do, things that we are not supposed to do, and probably when we get down to the bottom of it, we get convinced that there is no reason why, it's just that somebody has told us it can't be done. And to break away from that probably is 50% of success.
If we don't think how we are going to change our economic reality, both in a regional context and on a global context, and we will lose the race to capture those consumers that live in our backyards. I run a business that focused on this. I run a business that saw this opportunity, and we kind of decided that this was the only market and opportunity we wanted to play in. And so we started understanding the reality of what this marketplace meant.
You have indeed assembled at a global crossroads, and we who live and work here are delighted to welcome you, visitors from abroad, to Dubai and to the United Arab Emirates. The UAE is in its 45th year of welcoming people from all over the world. We have about 200 nationalities here, to our emerging nation. Our commodious tent has sheltered them, and they have prospered and contributed immensely to the well-being of our country. We have welcomed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people intent on doing business here. And we still continue to rely on the skills, knowledge, and entrepreneurial spirit of our international community.
I did not have the international experience in the business that we were planning to do. So there was a perception also before I left the country, which is very important. The imagination was most of the Arabs will have about half a dozen oil wells in the backyard of their house. And, every Arab was treated as a very rich oil sheikh. So I thought I am also joining an oil sheikh. So I can pump a little bit of oil in the beginning, one day or the other, and make myself rich within a short period of time. This was a perception.
The issues have been raised in many different ways, but the way I respond to it overall in a way, I don't blame ourselves for the work that we do. I blame the thinking which led us to do the things we do. So I go back to the way all the structures, the concepts, and the way we are encouraged, we are inspired to devote ourselves in doing things, believing in what they said is the right thing to do. So what was said as the right thing to do, that's where the wrong things are. So that's how, and not that I was kind of trying to be a theoretician about it. I just accidentally got into those issues. And I created my responses to it without trying to create any wave anywhere. You know, first one, as you are familiar with, the lending money to poor people.
We believe that it will be very difficult to match the progress and success that DMCC has brought to the table. We are still moving fast. We're still registering on average around 150 companies a month. We're looking to grow that as we move on. We're looking to build one of the tallest office buildings in the world. Today is more known as the Burj 2020 district.
And this is definitely a declining Western century relative to its own power. If you go back to 100 years ago, there were less than 100 countries on the planet. There's 186. It's my view that countries are no longer the currency of the unit of transaction that they once were. What you may find is in 50 years' time, there's another 100 countries on the planet.
My parents, my sister and I were refugees during the genocide in Rwanda. We started again back in Uganda, and at that time, when I was trading in IT parts, Dubai was the perfect hub to actually come and buy parts from. China at the time in 1996 was still focused on very large volumes, and therefore Dubai became that, you know, that ground where you could actually pick up smaller quantities. And I'd love to say that it was down to the fact that we had vision and we had the strategy that that, you know, maybe if I went to Harvard, that would have been the case. But just quitting school at the age of 15, I didn't have much of that. But the whole thing of Africa being as attractive as it is today as a continent, doing business Pan-African, is so appealing and creates that much more value.
My role is to bridge old and new. So whether it's countries, I was in Myanmar 4 years ago, opening up Myanmar to the West, opening up Myanmar, specifically certain sectors. Now I'm working very closely in Iran, opening up Iran to new players. So it's whether it's countries, whether it's companies, or whether it's people. I've recently set up an angel network.
This panel will look very closely at what the leaders of the 21st century look like. Young people will be essential, so will women as well, in driving our future.
For me to share with you some of my experience regarding youth and also regarding the role in the developments of our region. In the high-level meeting of United Nations General Assembly dedicated to youth. 2011 was the year of youth during the Arab Spring. And I have said at that time that youth have changed, and so have their environments, cultural, social, political, economical, and information framework.
What's your views when it comes to enabling both the young people and women to become more active in our future?
See, not too long ago, we could have had exactly the same discussion on women and the youth, and we would have talked about how it is our right to be involved in the workforce, how it would be fair, how it's a matter of equality. And I still think we should have this discussion, but more and more people, and many of the leaders also here in the room, when I hear you speak, have realized that this is not only a matter of equality, it's the most simple business imperative. Your teams will simply perform better when you mirror your customers. Your teams will simply perform better when they're diverse. You will be able to, in a war for talent, only get the best talent if you also include the women and, of course, the young workforce.
So they really recruit the best value for money. What that does do, and from my perspective, is that it drops a lot of ageism issues, gender issues. So if I'm looking for the best engineer, regardless if they're 20 or 40, regardless if they're a man or a woman, regardless if they're where their nationality is from, I just want the best engineer because I'm cash strapped.
You may allow me to define STEM. I'm sure most audience know that it's an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. But what is that one word that brings all these subjects together? What is the unifying theme behind them? It's really logic. So the foundation of these kind of subjects is logic. And you need logic in any principle that you're working in, whether you are a scientist, an engineer, a politician, or even a film producer.
I was also informed that after the quality of this morning's speakers, I would have to begin this by setting my hair on fire. I've declined the opportunity, though one of my cohorts offered me a lighter. You know, why innovate? It's interesting. There was a great talk earlier about several people mentioning the disaster economically in 2008, 2009. Okay. This was a question McKinsey asked a bunch of global execs. What's the most important thing to grow? That's grow jobs, grow wealth. They said innovation, 54% of them in 2007. They went back and asked the same question in 2010, and something really stunning occurred. It turns out now 84% thought innovation is critical. That's not because the numerator got bigger. It's because the denominator got a lot smaller. If you didn't innovate, you died. You know, when I grew up, the people who, put a man on the moon, those were the rock stars. If you look between the US and the UK, that's all, just the US and the UK, we estimated you could feed more than 1 billion people with the food we throw away. Because we grew it in the wrong place, we couldn't transport it, we made a bad economic bet as to what would sell.
Bigger.
Okay.
Say hi to
Absolutely.
anybody. Get the energy back in, guys. That's the way to do it. Yeah. The second thing we have to do, we have to get our blood circulating again. And this is your exercise. And what you have to do is just like that, and you do this, and you bounce. And when you bounce, all the energy comes back. And then you do that. Get your shoulders, and then you do it around your brain. Because the brain starts working, and then you do this. Stomach starts going. Put the volume up. And keep going. 1 minute.
You're dangerous. Wow, look at that. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much.
I guess in my mind, disruption is looking at two things. One is changing every day, changing the norm, and looking how to improve that. Bernie just talked a lot about continuous innovation. The Japanese call this Kaizen. This is the pursuit of perfection. You never get to perfection, so you continuously improve just a little bit every day. We call this iterative innovation. And over time, small changes end up making big differences. When it goes beyond human into a world that we haven't even thought about, then you're dealing with things that are beyond our own capacity at this point in time. And I think that there's going to be a stage where that bit's a bit scary, but there's going to be whole stages in between in which intelligence will become a commodity. So in the next 20 years, you won't need to remember your times tables. You won't need to remember languages. You will be able to access that from the cloud in a microsecond.
Leading from the emerging present. And it's the idea that you never can actually predict the future, but you can see the signals of change in the present around you. So we're blessed with wonderful leadership here, and His Highness and our boss, His Excellency Muhammad Gergawi, sets the framework. He says, look, we want to empower people. We want to help make people happy. We want to help make people successful.
Jambu is from Uber. I've always found it very fascinating as a company. You don't do anything, right? You just you don't do anything, you don't own anything, you just have a $60 billion valuation doing zip. Can you just tell us the secret of that, please? Because we'd like to replicate it.
It's a lot of professional agitators. No, listen, I think it's a paradigm, right? And I think the idea of the paradigm is about efficiency. And historically, capital investment has been incredibly inefficient. And in any business in the world, I think you've got to ask the question, what are the pieces of that where ownership is actually detrimental and ownership can actually be shifted to individuals in a way that empowers them? And the important thing to realize about Uber is it's a two-sided marketplace. Many of us may be Uber riders, but there are Uber driver partners. that benefit from the marketplace and their ability to put their own capital, start their own businesses, create their own jobs, and build wealth. And particularly when you put that against the paradigm that many people today have talked about, challenges with employment and challenges with entrepreneurship, that is incredibly powerful. 40% of the driver partners that walk into our office in Egypt today are unemployed.
You know, there are going to be a lot less jobs in the future, a lot less jobs. You look at the historical evidence in the last 15, 20 years, they call it jobless growth. That's because technology enables increasing productivity without the need for new jobs. So I think that one of the things which we have to really honestly grapple with in terms of a crisis of acceptance, not of awareness, is that we are facing a jobless future. So what does it mean to be a human being, a valued member of society in a jobless future? That's a fundamental rethinking of our economic and social contract.
I think the thing that makes us particularly human, there's three key areas. One is imagination, the second is collaboration, and the third is exploration.
The other piece that I think is super critical, and we've learned this, is access to the marketplace is incredibly equal.
Yeah.
Right? You can start a business and an app in the Philippines, and your biggest customers can be in Sweden. And that does not matter at all. It comes down to a very, very simple question, which is how prepared are you to disrupt yourself?
But at this point, almost everything we throw out there is open. You want to go play with Watson? Fine. You get on Bluemix, you get an idea, and you go play with it, just like that. And that's a key element to the success in this era.
Can we do some live coaching here? And you have 4 of the world's greatest coaches sitting here. Does anybody have the courage to stand up and say they'd like to disrupt themselves tomorrow and let these people guide you?
Create a shadow you, a shadow leader whose job is to disrupt yourself and then get young people to do it with them.
I think it's, I think it's identify your largest threat, what you think the largest threat to your business is, and then ask yourself, why not do that yourself?
If you have to drag yourself out of bed in the morning to go do your job, change it. Just do something different. I mean, you will never, ever reinvent yourself if that's the mode of operation. Good luck to you.
Don't think about what somebody else will do. Think about instituting change yourself and start thinking about doing it today. Because I tend to find that thinking about what other people are thinking is just a waste of time. Just get on and make the change yourself.
So I wish you all the best. Come back next year. Thank you to this wonderful, wonderful team. And over to our president.